Okay, so speaking of hits, let's talk about Donte Whitner.
Yeah, great job
Whitner.
on the pre and post NBC Sports Bay Area.
Very good job. Yeah. So he was on Up and Adams with Kay Adams, and he was asked about trading Trey Lance. And essentially what he said was, that stuck out to me, was that, and this is a quote, Kyle Shanahan's system needs a very good backup QB.
Wow.
And that hit me.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, what does that mean?
What did you get? Because I'm ready to fire when you throw it to me.
No, because we've had conversations when the Niners have gone through all these injuries at the quarterback position. Is it Jimmy Garoppolo and injury luck? What does that mean? Or is there something in Kyle Shanahan's system that does leave quarterbacks in a position where they can get injured? So I don't know. And Kyle, of course, he says it's just bad luck. A lot of fans
more
say
than that,
it's bad
Alan.
luck. And when you say, why are we talking about the backup QB position? Because let's listen to Donte Whitner, a great football player, saying himself, in Kyle's offense, in Kyle's system, you need a very good backup QB. And I just 888-957-9570. When you talk about the backup QB situation and why we're so invested in it, do you think these injuries have anything to do with Kyle Shanahan's system, quote, and I'm air quoting for those who aren't watching on the YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union, or is it just bad luck?
There's no doubt in my mind. Stoney and I went back and forth like ping pong, Alan. The run scheme that the Niners use, the tosses, we even see it to a degree with Debo. Mm-hmm. It's a mixture, but to me, it's 80% that they play physical, Olivia Newton-John. And that's why, if you allow me for this exercise, the sake of this exercise, we could take it back to Breida, Mostert. Now the guy we talked about that can't stay on the field, Elijah Mitchell. It's physical. Mm-hmm. And I know it's a contact sport, but for whatever reason, if you're not going to tell me Jimmy Garoppolo is injury prone. Mm-hmm. We didn't know that before he got in town. How many different times he went down, and he wasn't being used like Trey Lance when we didn't like it. So I understand that some are on the side to where it is football. Kyle himself saying,
well, of course he's going to say that.
But I go back to the 2021 season where the pandemic year where they were playing the last of their home games in Arizona, and a playoff position was on the line. And we kept seeing Beathard, we kept seeing Mullins, and they would always come up gimpy. It just happens. And last year we saw it with Debo. We've seen it with Debo. We've seen it with Garoppolo last year. Mm-hmm. We saw it with Trey Lance, with the finger, my neck and my back, trying to get in the goal line a couple years ago when he started against the Cardinals in Arizona. But, Alan, I don't have the science to back me up, but I think Donte Whitner, not biting his tongue, was basically saying, I've seen enough. I played the game to where the backup quarterback is closer to playing for the Niners than any other the 31 other cities, and that's why I felt like he had that mustard on that take. You say what?
Yeah, and the first thing I would say is there are two things going on here. Number one is that Kyle Shanahan and who he drafts, I will continue to say he has a type. He likes guys that are not afraid to get hit. We're going to talk about Ronnie Bell and how they're bringing on...
And that's okay, too, Alan, if that's your type.
Right. We're going to talk about Ronnie Bell and how they're bringing on Anthony Miller and how that affects him. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Right. But you have a guy like Ronnie... You look at him, wow. He likes contact. You look at Debo, wow. That guy likes contact. George Kittle, wow. That dude likes contact. And you start to see, okay, this seems to be the type of player that the Niners like to draft. So that's one part of it. The other part of it would be, I guess, the QB aspect. And we can even eliminate Trey because when you're a runner, a lot of things can happen. But
because that's how we got hurt.
Sure.
Yeah.
But even looking at the Brock Purdy situation, a lot of people were saying,
you had your backup tight end blocking.
And that's the question, right? Well, you had somebody that will say, that happens all the time in football. Then you have somebody else will say, but does it happen more in Kyle's scheme? Yeah. And that's the reason they said they went out and got Sam Darnold for a couple reasons. Brock Purdy's injury, Trey Lance question marks, but also you just ran through how many quarterbacks last season? At what point would you say that this has to be on some part Kyle scheme, and I'm not, the biggest NFL scheme aficionado, but I would say Donte Whitner is. So if he can say that, I think there's some meat behind those potatoes, and that's the reason we sit here and we do have to talk about the backup QB, because since how long was it? 2014, whenever it was, the backup has seen time. Now somebody would say that happens a lot for other teams too.
Well, I know where you're going.
We're talking about meaningful games, and even Brock Purdy before he got, and I don't remember the actual hit, but even before the UCL, Brock was hurting in Seattle.
He had a broken rib.
He was hurting.
Yeah.
So some of that, how much of that is football? I like my pie charts. Yeah. How much of that is football, and how much of that is the Kyle scheme? And I think that this is the line, Goo. If something happens, because you could say Jimmy Garoppolo use injury prone, bad injury luck, whatever you want to use.
High ankle sprain left, high ankle sprain right.
Jimmy's gone. Yeah. If something happens to Brock Purdy,
again,
I think that's where you have to start to ask the question. Does Kyle need to look in the mirror here? And only Kyle can answer that question.
Yeah, and Alan, because I don't have the science to back me up, but I do have the games missed by quarterbacks. And the fact that Donte Whitner said that, it resonates. And it resonates because he's telling you what he's watching.
Yeah.
He's not trying to be politically correct. Not that this is offensive, but I don't even think Kyle has the answer. But the bottom line is, this team has endured more injuries at the running back / quarterback position than I can remember any other team. And Allen, a couple years ago, I swear to you, on the same station in the same microphone, I told Steiny, I would get rid of the medical staff. Like, is it on the are they doing something? I don't know how they're prepping them.
Yeah.
And then what does that got to do come game day, Goo?
Yeah.
But that's how far I wanted to go down the rabbit hole of, I don't have all the information, but I know the facts are this dude, Kyle, and guys are dropping like flies. And again, Kittle missed time last year.
Yeah. Xfinity mobile text line saying right here, 415, roll the QB to the right. He's going to get blown up. Also saying they believe that it is the system. At some point, you have to ask these questions. And how much of that is also
because the Niners are physical. That is their thing.
And then, let's slow it down here, because then you have Jimmy Garoppolo, and people. If you remember that Jimmy Garoppolo injury, Jimmy didn't want to go down, right? So something like that, I am torn, because Jimmy doesn't want to go down. Why, Goo? Because it's football, and what happens in football? Players get hurt. Yeah. So in that situation, am I blaming Kyle? Now, would somebody say, well, I would blame Kyle because they even got to Jimmy? You'll never be able to just zero in on it, but I don't think I can sit here, and 888-957-9570, continue to chime in on the Affinity Mobile text line and the call line as well. I don't think you can continue to sit here and say that it's only bad luck. That's just a lot of bad luck, Goo. And I told you I got 2 cats. I got a black cat. That's a lot of black cats running around.
Or her name?
Xena.
Okay.
So I got Xena and Shasta. I got Xena and Shasta, my 2 cats. And you have a black cat running around the quarterback area of the organization. I don't believe that. Actually, black cats get adopted less because there is a stigma that they are bad luck. And I don't believe the Niners have bad luck. I believe that it might be partly bad luck, partly football, but we have to also look at Kyle Shanahan's scheme. Now, if Donte Whitner can do that, now we can open this up.
And maybe that's why, Phenomenal take, Alan. And maybe that's why we got guys and gals fighting on YouTube and this battle royale for the backup quarterback position for the Niners.
Yeah.
In a crazy world, help me, Alan, kind of means more than it does per se in Dallas or Buffalo when Allen or Dak can get hurt week 1 and you're the Cooper Rush or whoever. But here, we're going on what we know. The Carfax report for Kyle Shanahan's starters on offense, to me, is way greater than any other team. And never go full Jeff on the first NorCal.
That's your guy.
Yeah, he wasn't, but he's a critic too. He comes at me. But teams that played Niners, they were 0-16 the week after. So that just goes to the Olivia Newton-John. Every game's a car crash, but it takes a lot more out of you when you play these Niners.
Yes.
And I'm going to say this about Brock. Tell me if I'm off kilter here. If I am a defensive coordinator, I'm dialing up the blitz left and right to put a hit on the quarterback. Now, that play, we may be leaking in the back end. You may gain 15 or 20 yards, but Allen, it'll be greater later if we can hit him. shake that cage. And I believe this has been done to Jimmy and many other quarterbacks to where, okay, we gave up a first on that 15. We got gashed on that one. But the impact of that hit, if we hit you in the rotator cuff or the shoulder area of the back, and that's why I always think about Brock Purdy and him not being the biggest guy, I think we're going to see more teams dial it up this season. Let's see if this dude, because I keep thinking of Jimmy, and as much as he was hurt, he is Jeff Garcia / John Wayne to me. Guys that got slapped around the world. I was like, he ain't getting up from that. But Rocky Balboa, they rise. And we can go to the 2019 Super Bowl. Look at what the Chiefs start doing to Jimmy and how they were hitting him.
Yeah.
And the dude, to his credit, Pretty Boy Floyd, would get up. I think Brock has not entered that realm yet.
Well, we don't know. And what we do know is that in the 8 games he did play, he broke a rib and he tore his UCL. So and don't get me. I'm looking at it in a vacuum here.
But those are facts.
You need context, but those are actually are also facts. Yeah. So we're gonna see, because you're right, and I think there is a brotherhood in the NFL. I don't think anybody would say, unless you're the Saints, right? Back in the day, I don't think anybody bounty hunting.
Yeah, what was the D coordinator's name? Spadoni John. What's my guy's name? That was paying the players to hit him.
I'm trying to think through here, Goo.
Oh no, but we got the young bucks in the back.
They'll get you in the back. I didn't know who you were talking to.
You know who I'm talking to you. Yeah. I'm talking to us. It's 4-man show.
We'll get to it.
The Saints. The guy that got
Greg Williams?
Greg Williams. Thank you, Spadoni. That's
our
Google.
guy.
Yeah.
That's our guy.
What are you talking about?
But Greg Williams he had bounties. Go get the QB. Hurt him.
But I'm saying I think there is a brotherhood in the NFL. I don't think anybody would say, I'm trying to hit Brock in the elbow, but it's also football. And these things can happen naturally and organically. You're not going to get through a season bubble wrapping Brock. And that's why we did the fill in the blank yesterday. The Niners win the Super Bowl which we can still continue to run, 888-957-9570. Also, are we talking enough about this offensive line? Because we had people call in and say, if Brock stays healthy, we've had people call in and say it will be about the defense. Nobody said if this offensive line holds up.
It's everything, Alan, and I know it's not sexy, and some people may say it's too technical. I get it, but we are just smashing past a unit that it's just imperative that they ball out or have a good year to keep this young man upright. But you go to, and I know it's basketball, and the great Kobe used to do it. He'd have a bandage on. I'm slapping at that thing. Whatever ailment you have, it's just real.
It's a fine line.
Yeah, we love you, but we coming. We about to test that bad boy out.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, and it is really interesting where that line is. Right, I don't think any team would go in saying we're trying to hit Brock in the elbow, but also we are trying to hit you.
No doubt, Alan.
We are trying to hit you.
No doubt, man.
And they're gonna know. Okay, this is where the O line is leaking oil a little bit, and they're gonna try to put that out on Front Street from the get-go, Goose. So I think there has to be a conversation about it. And even when you talk about the backups and the backup to the backup.
Yes, it's a real big deal.
You are running through quarterbacks, and there just comes to a point where I can't sit here and just say bad luck.
You know what? I agree, and I'm going to go read this from Devin Smith in the YouTube chat. It's going to come down to home field advantage. And I know, you're stating the obvious, Devin. You're right. Because, Alan, let me tell you, Bosa was in New York. We didn't get a deal done, and hopefully they get it done. I'm assuming he'll be there
soon.
But it's everything for this Niner team who's been on the road in the most important game the last 2 seasons. Okay,
yeah,
they were on the road, and when they went to the Super Bowl, they had that home game. You remember that?
Yeah.
So slow starts are, where this team is at, and is Kyle going to kick the door in? I know it's week 1, Guru. Every game's a playoff game in the NFL, but for this Niner team and where they're at, window, no window, Allen, they got to get off to a good start. So hopefully they can have that home, that championship game here. Last 2 been on the road.
They don't want to be on the road, and you got to start fast. But again, going back to the play calling. And are you going to be able to – everybody wants to see the long ball. maybe it's not a matter of whether Brock can throw it or not. Is there enough time for Brock to throw the long ball?
Right.
Is there enough time for that?
Yeah, right.
Because how much time is there?
But you got the best left tackle still in the game.
No, I get that. I get that.
But the right tackle's new, McKivitz.
Was Trent Williams playing when Brock got hurt?
Yes, he was.
I thought so. Okay,
wow.
so you have
and Trent can have a bad day.
Anybody
It's not
can.
even tough
Again, now we're going back to the Giants.
Yeah.
Margin of error.
That
there is a small margin of error. I think the Niners as a whole have a bigger margin of error because of their roster.
But the O-line.
But the O-line specifically. Right. So you got to try to get Brock out in space. And Brock is another guy. He's got that competitor in him. He's got that chip on his shoulder. Yeah. He doesn't want to go down.
I saw it the other day, Saturday.
He does not want to go down.
You don't go down and slide.
You don't want to go down. And
you don't sit down.
Well, and honestly, that's part of the conversation too, because when you are a Brock Purdy, somebody who's got that chip on his shoulder, and I want to prove people that I'm tough, I want to prove people this, there is a fine line to where, hey, you are our guy now.
Yeah.
So we want you to still be that dude, but you got to find a middle ground. This happens with a lot of the franchise QBs, but there's got to be a middle ground to where you understand the big picture. You getting 2 extra yards there and possibly getting hurt is not worth it.
Yeah.
Not worth it. Take your medicine. We'll punt it. We'll get the ball back. Don't forget, we got a top 5 defense once you sign Nick Bosa.